Power. So in our society, how do we measure power? Money.
Influence.
Status. Influence. Career, titles, fame, and of course, likes on Facebook. In reality, these illusions are controlling us perhaps more than we're controlling them. And there are some other authentic divine powers that we can tap into and express through ourselves. And today we're going to go old school. And that means we're going to use the Bible as some of our reference texts.
All right.
Now in Unity, we don't always give the Bible a lot of play. And that might be because some of our beliefs are a language wrapped around being New Thought. And of course, New Thought seems to be at odds with an old book. In reality, perhaps a better word for us would be renewed thought. Because we know there's nothing new under the sun. I mean, today a love song will be written by somebody, and it won't be new. It'll be a unique expression of that person's experiencing love, but there's no new love songs. Right? My daughter, Carly's here, and I remember as she was growing up, she might say, "Hey, Dad, look at this cool new fashion that we have." I'm like, that's so 80s. Nothing new about that. Or 60s, right? It's a renewed fashion, right? Something that comes back, perhaps with a slightly different expression. But the really, again, it's ancient wisdom. So we're going to tap into some ancient wisdom today, perhaps with some renewed thought. We're going to jump into the book of Ephesians, chapter 3, verse 20, where it says, "With God's power working in us, God can do much, much more than we can ask or imagine." So what's cool about this is that, one, it is God's power that works through us. And God needs us. God needs us for its power to be expressed. Just like Jesus when he told Philip and the other disciples, "Philip, when you've seen me, you've seen God." And he said that not out of arrogance, but out of simply understanding the connection with divinity. So, God needs us in order for its power to show up and manifest through us. So let's look at 3 ways that God can unleash his power through us. 3 simple ways. Oftentimes, simple is in itself very powerful. The first power that God can use through us is a power of our thoughts. We just talked about that in Unity Principle number 3. And one of the reasons why our thoughts are so powerful is because they become our beliefs. You see, a belief is a thought that we think over and over again. Our beliefs are thoughts that we think over and over again. And then we know that our beliefs influence our feelings and our attitudes, which impact our actions or our behaviors, which then give us our results, our life, which is simply an outpicturing of thought form. And in nature, we can think about thoughts as seeds. And as we spread seeds, we reap from them the exact result or the exact DNA of that seed. We reap what we sow. So if we plant a tomato thought, we reap tomatoes. And we get that in nature. We might not always get that reality in ourselves, in that whatever thought seeds we're planting are the exact harvest we will be reaping. So if I ever want to know, if I'm ever curious about my thoughts, I simply take a look take a look at my harvest. What's coming up in my life? What's springing up in my life? That is evidence of the seeds that I've been sowing. Now, we also influence our thoughts through our programming. which is our choice. Perhaps there was a time in our life, and as young children, that the programming came upon us. But there was another time where we became grown-ups, where we get to choose the programming that will influence our thoughts, that form our beliefs, that influence our attitudes and actions that give us the outpicturing of our life. There's a Harvard researcher, Sean Akor, if you ever have seen his TED Talk titled The Happy Secret to Better Work. I use it with my clients as we work along the thought process in their business. He says this: the majority of our news and media intake is not positive. Rather, it's negative. Most is about murder, corruption, disease, natural disasters, and our brains begin to think that's the accurate ratio of negative to positive in the world. Our brains actually begin to think that everywhere you go, there are terrorists. Our brains begin to think that everywhere you go, there are natural disasters.
Right.
Everywhere we go, there are mass murderers. Because that's the programming begin, and that, as we bring that programming in, it affects the seed, our thought seed that we plant. So it's important that we consider what are the influences of our thought. What are we reading? What are we listening to? Who are we hanging out with? So that even before our thought shows up, we begin to impact the programming that chooses what seed we plant. Again, the power is the thought I have today becomes my reality tomorrow. The thought I have today becomes my harvest, becomes my reality tomorrow. Also, not only power in our thoughts, but power in our words. And both written and spoken. And the written word is becoming somewhat of a lost art form. It is very personal, it takes time, it's thoughtful, it's creative, and we're seeing less and less of the written word, the power of the written word being shared in our lives. There's a book in the New Testament, 2 Timothy, where Paul, who's a mentor to Timothy, really writes this letter to Timothy, encouraging him as a young man and inspiring him. So you see this biblical manifestation of the power of the written word. When my daughters were young, somehow I caught that, and I decided to, as they grew up, provide them with written words about themselves. Sometimes they were cards, sometimes letters, sometimes they were just little documents that once they ended up sticking on their desks, on their little corkboards. And in 2005, I wrote this one to Carly, which stayed in her room until you packed up for college, and now it's in a memory box, right? But it's not gone. We keep written words around because we understand the power that they possess. So in 2005, I wrote to Carly. Carly, I was thinking about you the other day, and I thought about what I like in you. And here's some things. You are smart. You think of ways to accomplish things. You are brave. And you can also admit when you're afraid. You want to learn and then attempt to do new things, like baking and lap swimming. You have a good laugh. You are adventurous and want to explore. Remember, where do those train tracks go? You like to snuggle and relax. You have a good imagination and have dreams. So those written words, I might not have known at the time how powerful they were, or how powerful they can be, but I got it. This idea that we can speak or share power through the written word to people. So I recently started a new and important relationship in my life.
All right, then, Rich.
All right. Yes. She'll be around for a long time. Her name is Sarah. So I said, Sarah, so we decided early on in our relationship, as we're building this foundation, let's include the written word. Let's include the written word as part of forming our relationship. Now, she lives in Greensboro and I live in Greensboro. But we decided to write letters to each other. let's let's take advantage of this power that seems to be this lost art and mail them to each other. So I asked her actually this morning, I said, do you still have the stack of letters that you've been accumulating? She said, yes. I said, can I bring them to Unity as evidence? And she'll be here eventually, but she had a plan today. She said, yes. So these are,
Oh, my goodness, Rich.
this is what she has as a result of, right now, I have an equal stack. My house is just not as orderly. So this is the written word. There's a lot of power in those letters. There's a lot of affirmation in those letters. There's a lot of love in those letters. And it's the power that we can express. God's power expressing through us. Also, there's the power of the spoken word. Now, you've got the written word. There's the power of the spoken word. Proverbs says this: the tongue has the power of life and death. Literally and metaphysically, right? Literally. The tongue has ended lives throughout time. And it's also saved lives. Literally and figuratively. In James it says this: we all make mistakes. If anyone does not have a mistake with his tongue by saying the wrong things, they are a perfect person. We make a horse go wherever we want it to go with a small bit in its mouth. We turn its whole body by this. Sailing ships are driven by strong winds, but a small rudder turns a large ship wherever way the captain wants the ship to go. The tongue is also a small part of the body, but it can speak big things. See how a very small fire can set many trees on fire? The tongue can be a fire. People can make all kinds of animals and birds and fish and snakes do whatever they want with them. But no person can make their tongue say what they want it to say. You ever had that problem? Sometimes my tongue just stuff it should not be said. One phrase I share with my clients is some of the best things I've ever said are the things I've never said.
Right.
Learn more from that. With our tongue, we give thanks to God. And with our tongue, we speak bad words against people who are made like God. Give thanks and speaking bad words come from the same mouth. So we have this power, not only in our written word, but we have this, we are full of power, powerful, with this spoken word. I remember I was in Charleston, South Carolina, going through a certification process. I had made a career change. And so I was beginning a career with Dale Carnegie. If you've heard of Dale Carnegie, there's professional development courses. So I was teaching and selling these courses. And in order to sell them better, I needed to teach them better, know more about them. So I was in the certification. It was a rigorous process. And this weekend was in Charleston, South Carolina. And I was taking the certification for a presentations course, how we can teach a presentations course. Now, North Carolina was owned, it's a franchise, was owned by a gentleman named Earl Taylor. Earl Taylor was known throughout the globe. If you traveled literally throughout the globe in Dale Carnegie, you could mention Earl Taylor. People would just stop. Oh, Earl Taylor. What's it like working with Earl Taylor? You know? It's like Jesus and all great spiritual masters. Earl Taylor was a great spiritual master within Dale Carnegie. And certainly that was influential on our North Carolina team. He was a fabulous presenter and communicator, and we saw that, and we observed that, and some of that started showing up in us. So I was at the certification program. Clark Merrill was the facilitator, the master facilitator for us. And on day 3, which is approaching the time where we're going to be finished and learn whether we pass or fail. You either pass or fail. And the recorder, what do you call that thing again? The camera. The camera was rolling because we were taping each other. And I was working on my presentation when Clark Merrill said, "Stop the camera." So the master trainer said, "Stop the camera." That's not a good sign. I think, oh boy, I may have failed this one. And Clark Merrill looked at me and said, "Rich, stop trying to be Earl Taylor. You're good enough.
Wow.
Clark Merrill changed my life. In that one phrase, stop trying to be somebody else, Rich. You're enough. Powerful word. And I believed Clark Merrill. You see, that word that came into me, I decided to wrap a belief around it. And it was a place where I started communicating more like me and stop imitating somebody else. The power of words. I remember after I was divorced, I went to dinner with my good friend Chris Avis. Chris Avis was a college roommate and a business partner for years. And he's somebody I lean upon. So we decided to go out to eat, and Chris said, we're going to need to go to Outback Steakhouse, Rich. We're going to need beer and steak. That's what men do. They eat steak and they drink beer. Look it up. So, all right, let's go eat steak and drink beer. So we were doing that. And, so it was a time when I was feeling like a failure. There was evidence of brokenness, and I thought, I must be a failure. And I'll never forget what Chris Davis said to me that night, because it's the power of spoken words. When he looked at me and said, Rich, of all the people I know, you should be great. Never forget those words, because they were full of power. They were spoken with truth, they were spoken with love, and they were given to me as a gift. And we have that ability to breathe truth into somebody else, to encourage them, to give life back to them through our spoken words, as well as our written words. And finally, action. So we have power through our thoughts. Everything that we have today is a result of a thought seed that was planted some time ago. We have the power of speaking and writing words into people that will literally change their life, one way or another. Then we have the ability to use our powerful actions. In 1 Corinthians, known as the love chapter, it says this: if I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. Not a good sound, right? If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor, and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not envy. And it does not boast, and is not proud. It does not dishonor. And it does not seek self. It is not easily angered. And it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. It always protects, and it always trusts, and it always hopes, and it always perseveres. Love never fails. Think about that, what's packed in that verse. The actions, the powerful actions that we can demonstrate these divine qualities through us to people around us, like patience, like kindness, like honor, truth, protect, trust. I remember when I was part of a more traditional community, religious community, I heard a phrase. And I heard the phrase enough that I thought it was actually like a biblical phrase. I didn't check it, which is a problem. You check what you hear, right? And here's how the phrase went: love the sinner, hate the sin. If you've been part of maybe a traditional church setting, you may have heard that. Ever heard that? Love the sinner, hate the sin. And I took that on. I was like, oh, God. Love the sinner, hate the sin. I got it. It came from a place of authority. It came from a place of authority, so I was just thinking, this is truth. I took that thought and I wrapped a belief around it. And I remember a day, I was with a friend of mine. And part of his life represented something that that church didn't agree with. Part of his life represented something that that church did not agree with. And I remember eating lunch with this guy thinking, love the sinner, hate the sinner, love the sinner, hate the sinner, love the sinner, hate the sinner. I was crazy the whole time. And after that, I got quiet, and the voice said, what are you doing? You're trying to mesh love and hate, Rich. What are you doing? You trying to bring love and hate to the same moment? You can't do it. Rich, choose love. Choose love. I got you. And that changed everything for me. And so it was really that action, it was that time where I said, wow, what action can I let God show up through me? Love. Let that be what comes through me. And whatever that also might be. Maybe compassion. Again, maybe patience, kindness. But there is so much power in our action when we choose that action to be influenced by love. 1 week ago, yesterday, I was running a half marathon. It's called the Cannonball Half Marathon right here in Greensboro. Home field advantage. About 12 and a half miles, I came upon a gentleman, and as I was approaching him, I heard him muttering something. I'm like, I can barely breathe. Why is he talking out loud? So I came upon his left shoulder, and I heard the words, I got this. I got this. I got this. He had a mantra going on at 12 and a half miles. And as I went by him, I thought to myself, yeah, I got this. I got this. And that carried me up the last hill to the finish line. And later on I reflected. I actually wrote a blog about it this Tuesday. Oh, wow. What other thoughts were vying for his attention at that time? I'm sure there was a thought that wanted to be heard that sounded like this. Your legs are heavy and your lungs are burning. Your legs are heavy, your lungs are burning. I'm sure there might have been another thought also wanting attention that it may have sounded like this. Your bed is warm. It's cold and rainy out here. Your bed is warm. It's cold and rainy out here. It would have made sense. And I'm sure there was at least one other voice that was saying, there's so many people ahead of you. Why are you here? There's so many people better than you. You're not enough. But of all those potential thoughts, he chose, I got this. I got this. I got this. And that came out in a belief. You see, the thought became a belief and came out in his words, right? The power of his thoughts showed up in the power of his words. And that power of his words even impacted me as I went by him. And finally, it showed up in action. He was not far behind me. He finished 13.1 miles. So there's power in our thoughts that we choose and how we influence those thoughts. And there's power in the words that we express, whether it's written or whether it's verbal. And there's power in our actions, particularly as they show up as love. You see, God needs you. God needs you. And God needs to express its divine power through you. We got the power. What are you going to do?